然后各位读者大家早安。那个我们10月5号不是因为台风假有 postpone 一场嘛，就是有一场延后了。那当然就是时间就在那边好，下礼拜好，然后再下场就是11月2号，大家可以连上3个礼拜高个社课。好，对，那12月7号、21号的这个日期我也写在黑板上面，然后之后网站上都会再做另外公告。那大家既然来了，就先把它抄起来。OK， 好。OK， 好，谢谢周老师，耶。
I hope all of you enjoyed your typhoon day the other week. Taichung, after how many years? I think over 15 years of no typhoon day. We have 2, and nothing happens in Taichung. So it's great for most people, but for like me, if I run a company or business, it's actually kind of a waste of time. But anyhow, I guess, in English, we always say better safe than sorry, right? It's hard to predict what typhoons will do. So anyhow, here we are. And have all of you been, any of you gone down to the jazz festival? And have you been there? The Taichung Jue Jie. Okay. Yeah, so I've been there 4 nights already. So pretty good, I think. So yeah, it's been fun, and the weather's been pretty good. So it's been a nice time to go enjoy some jazz music. Okay, if you haven't been there, it goes until this Sunday at Shimin Guangchang. You can go down there and check it out. And then, of course, I want to remind you that I think I've already told you about this, but November 4th and 5th is the COMPASS Festival. So also at Shimin Guangchang. Yeah. So anyhow, if you have time, you can go check that out as well. Okay. So I thought today we would start with a headline article on what's going on in Israel and Gaza Strip, because this is a big news story. Everybody's talking about it, and it's created a lot of division in the world, especially in places like the United States and the UK and many other Western countries. There seems to be different perspectives on this issue. So anyhow, kind of interesting. I was just reading an article how, there's all these American universities where there have been some protests in favor of Palestine, and even in favor of Hamas, or some people would call them anti-Israeli protests. And it's very interesting because a lot of major American companies have said, okay, if you protest against Israel or in favor of Hamas or Palestine, that's it. We're not hiring you. You can't work at our company. We don't want that kind of people at our company. So it's kind of interesting how this has created a lot of fighting between different groups and everything. Okay, so anyhow, this is talking about not the bigger picture, but the people who are obviously impacted by this on both sides. So here it says, doctors struggle to save hospital blast survivors in Gaza. Okay, I think we usually pronounce it Gaza, not Gaza, but Gaza. Okay, so why don't we say together Gaza? Gaza. Okay, blast is another word for what? What would be another word for blast? What? Yeah, actually, blast is a good word. Yeah, explode is a 动词, so explosion. Now, of course, blast could be a verb or a noun, 动词 or 名词. So if you wanted to use it as a verb, 动词, we would say explode. Okay, explosion, explode. Okay, so why don't we say this word together, blast, blast. And then down there, explosion, explosion, explode, explode. Okay, so yeah, anything that blows up or, so we say doctors struggle. Struggle, of course, means they're struggling, they're fighting to save hospital blast survivors. And what's a survivor? Yeah, if you are a survivor of an accident, what does that mean? It means you have survived, right? Yeah. So if you've survived, it means you're still alive. You're still here. So if you are a survivor, yeah, survivor is just another way of saying somebody has survived. And survive means you're still alive. Why don't we say that word too? Survivors. Survivors. Okay. So let's go on to the article. It says here, doctors in Gaza City yesterday faced with dwindling medical supplies performed surgery on hospital floors, often without anesthesia, in a desperate bid to save badly wounded victims of a massive blast that killed civilians sheltering in a nearby hospital. Okay, this is a good word, dwindling. What does dwindling mean? Yeah, reduce little by little means to go down, to drop, to fall, to shrink. I guess probably shrink, if you said shrinking, yeah, shrinking. Now, of course, shrinking can be used in many different ways. For, if you say we have a shrinking supply of water, it would be like this word. But you could also say if you wash your clothes in hot water, they might shrink, right? You might make your clothing smaller. But yeah, shrinking, dwindling, it means it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So, if you can say, I have a dwindling supply of money, it means my money is getting less and less. Okay, so yeah, it's a good word. If you want to use this as a verb, 动词, it's dwindle, D-W-I-N-D-L-E, dwindle, just like that word is shrink if you want to use it as a 动词. So let's say this word together, dwindling, dwindling. And then as a 动词, dwindle, dwindle. And then that word over there, shrinking, shrinking. And then as a 动词, shrink, shrink. Okay. I just thought of something, and perhaps some of you know this. Shrink is also a slang word for something else. Do you know what a shrink is? It's a person. Do you know what if someone says he is a shrink, or I'm going to go see my shrink? Does everyone know what that means? It's a psychiatrist. Yes, it's if you have some issues like your 头脑 has some 问题, and you need to talk to somebody. Maybe you're feeling some problems. You go see your how do you say it in Chinese? Yeah, something like that. So a shrink that's a slang word. That's not a word it's not an official word, but if you say he is a shrink or he is my shrink, it means that's a doctor that deals with that kind of issue. Yeah. Okay, so doctors in Gaza City yesterday faced with dwindling medical supplies. Okay, so their medical supplies are shrinking. They're getting less and less. Perform surgery. Now, surgery, of course, is 开刀, right? Okay, perform. We usually say to perform surgery, which is kind of interesting. I don't know why we say perform. I guess we could say to do surgery or to operate. To operate would be another word. If you just want to make this word into a verb, you say they operated or and of course the 名词 is operation. You can say I had an operation at the hospital. Okay, so surgery is perhaps the more official word. It's a more formal word. But they perform surgery. That's the way we use it. So why don't we say together, performed surgery. Perform surgery. And of course, the person who does that is a surgeon, S-U-R-G-E-O-N. S-U-R-G-E-O-N, surgeon. Okay, so why don't we say together, surgeon. Surgeon. Right, you could say he is a heart surgeon or he's a brain surgeon, okay. And then, of course, did I spell it right? Yeah, sorry, that's O-P-E-R. Okay, so why don't we say together, operated. Operated. Operation. Operation. Okay, so they perform surgery on hospital floors. Okay, so this is 很可怕. They're on the 地板, on the floors, often without anesthesia. And do you know what this is? Yeah. Right. If you get an operation, usually people want anesthesia, so they go to sleep or they can't feel anything. So why don't we say together, anesthesia. Anesthesia. Okay. In a desperate bid. Now, another word for bid here would be what? Starts with an A. A desperate. A-T-T. You know this word? A desperate. If you're trying to do something, a desperate. No. Well, what's another word for bid? I'm trying to come up with ask you what a different word for this is. A desperate attempt, right? If you say we are attempting to do something, it means we're trying, right? So a desperate attempt. That's a very common word. You could say a desperate bid, a desperate attempt. Okay, so let's say it together. Bid, bid, attempt, attempt. Yeah, so if you attempt to do something, it means you're trying to do it. I'm attempting to set a new world record, 世界纪录. I am attempting to finish my work today by 5 o'clock today. It means I'm trying. But here, a desperate bid, of course, this bid can be used in different ways. Bid can be an attempt, but it can also be like when we talk about the government, 政府, we often say a bid is like 投票, right? Like if I want to build something for the government, I have to bid on it, right? Or if you go to a 拍卖, right? You bid. Like, you say, I'm going to bid on that art, that painting. It means I am the bidder. I want that painting, so I will bid. I'll say, okay, I want $10,000 or $12,000. We call that a bid also. So this word bid is very flexible. We use it in many different ways. Okay, so in a desperate bid or attempt to save badly wounded victims, okay, these are victims, they were hurt, of a massive blast. So massive means huge, right? A huge explosion. We could say a huge explosion, a massive blast that killed civilians sheltering in a nearby hospital. Now, what does the word civilian mean? This word here. Yeah, not in the military. So the opposite of civilian, what? Well, yeah, but it basically means, I guess we could say non-military, right? You're not in the Army, you're not in the Navy, you're not in the Air Force. You're a non-military person. That means civilian. So, to my knowledge, we are all civilians here. I don't know if anyone's in the Army right now. But yeah, so why don't we say together, civilians. Civilians. And civilian can also be used as a 形容词, just like military is used as a 形容词, right? You can say a military operation, or you could say a civilian building or civilian. So it can be used also as a 形容词. Okay, so civilians sheltering in a nearby hospital. Sheltering, of course, shelter is a place of safety and protection, right? If you're trying to stay safe, you shelter. So here, shelter becomes a verb, 动词. But you can say shelter is also a noun, right? If it was raining outside today, you can say we sheltered inside the library during the rainstorm. Or they sheltered in their homes during the typhoon. It means they were looking or seeking protection and safety in their homes during the typhoon. So your house is a shelter, right? Because it's a roof over your head. So why don't we say together, sheltering. Sheltering. Okay, so let's read this together. Doctors in Gaza City yesterday faced with dwindling medical supplies performed surgery on hospital floors. Hospital floors. Often without anesthesia. In a desperate bid to save badly wounded victims of a massive blast that killed civilians sheltering. Let's say it again. Civilians sheltering in a nearby hospital. Okay. Any questions about this first paragraph? Okay. Okay, let's go on then. It says, The Hamas militant group blamed the blast on an Israeli airstrike, while the Israeli military blamed a rocket misfired by other Palestinian militants. Okay, now militant is an interesting word. Militant often means someone who's fighting, but maybe they're not part of an official army, right? You know, like Hamas, well, Gaza Strip is not a nation, right? So it's not like they have their guojun or anything like that. A militant would be like a fighter. Sometimes we use that word fighter. Fighter also can mean 战斗机. But here, if you're fighting, you're armed, you're fighting, but you're not really kind of an official army or an official government military. We might call that person a militant. Okay. Now, militant can be used if you are someone who likes to fight and you use force to fight. That can also be a 形容词. You can say a militant group, or he's acting in a very militant way. But militant is often used this way. So why don't we say that word together? Militant. Militant. Okay. The Hamas militant group is this group, right? They fight. They use guns and stuff like that, rockets and missiles. Okay. So they blame. I will say this. It's very interesting that even this word is controversial today in America and many other places, because a lot of people say, well, Hamas is not just a militant group, it's a terrorist group, 恐怖分子. So, there's a lot of complaints, 批评 against, when an article like this, like a Wenjiang says militant group, some people say, well, why are you calling them a militant group? They're a terrorist group, so just call them a terrorist group. Use the word terrorist, right? Because it's not just some group of people who are fighting. They're actually 恐怖分子. So I think that, even these words that we use today are very controversial. Right now, people are arguing about this a lot. So it says here, the Hamas militant group blamed the blast. They say, well, it's not our fault. They blamed the blast on an Israeli airstrike. Now, of course, an airstrike is when your airplanes come in and they drop bombs or they shoot missiles at something, and they hit something from the air. So sometimes we say air raid, R-A-I-D, air raid, but airstrike means, it's like saying an air attack, right? 攻击, air attack, we say airstrike. So why don't we say together, airstrike, airstrike. Strike, of course, means to hit, but it can be used like the word attack. You can say the United States struck, or is going to strike that place. Okay, it means to attack. Okay. While, the Israeli military blamed a rocket misfired by other Palestinian militants. Okay, rocket, of course, is what? Yeah, it's like, shoots up in the air, a rocket. Sometimes we say飞弹 is like a missile, right? M-I-S-S-I-L-E. But I don't think, usually a missile, I don't know, missiles, rockets. I will say this, rocket is a very broad word. For example, when you want to send a spaceman, astronaut into space, right? Or you want to shoot up a 卫星, a satellite into space, we use the word rocket. We do not use the word missile for 卫星 or space or anything like that. But rocket can be used for many different things. Here, of course, it's like a missile, but it's anyhow, it's a very similar word. But why don't we say together, rocket, rocket. Okay, so Israeli military says it was a rocket misfired. Okay, now what does misfired mean? Does anyone have any ideas on that? Right, exactly. So if you want to shoot something at somewhere and it goes the wrong way, or there's an accident, there's a 毛病, there's something goes wrong and it goes the wrong way. I'm sure maybe when you were kids, I know this happened to me, and I was playing with firecrackers, right? And sometimes you want to shoot a firecracker, instead of going that way, it goes this way, right? Or instead of going up, it goes down, or it doesn't go somewhere. So we say it misfired, okay? It went the wrong way, or did not do what it was supposed to do, okay? So why don't we say together, misfired, misfired. Okay, so they say it was a rocket misfired by other Palestinian militants. Okay, so this rocket went up and went down. Of course, the Palestinians are shooting thousands of rockets at Israel. So this word here, I want to just note, and I think you know this word already, but we're hearing this a lot. Palestine, T-I-N-E, with an E here, would be what? Does everybody know what that means, right? Yeah. So we hear that word a lot. Let's say together, Palestine. Palestine. And then this word, this is a shinonsu, Palestinian. Palestinian. Right. Okay. Any questions? Anything? Okay. Let's read this then. The Hamas militant group blamed the blast on an Israeli airstrike. One more time. Israeli airstrike. While the Israeli military blamed a rocket misfired by other Palestinian militants. One more time. Palestinian militants. Right. Now, I forgot to just remind you of this article. The country, of course, let's say together, Israel. Israel. And then shinonsa, Israeli. Israeli. Of course, this can also refer to the people of Israel. You can say he is an Israeli. Okay. Okay. I know at least one restaurant in Taichung that's owned by an Israeli, so it's kind of interesting. Good food. Okay. So it says here, at least 500 people were killed. The Hamas-run health ministry in the Gaza Strip said. Now, Gaza Strip, of course, is that strip. You know what a strip is, right? A strip is a long, thin something. I mean, it could be a strip of ground. It could be a strip of our floor. But here, of course, it's a large piece of land, and it's long and thin, so we call it a strip. Okay, so the official name is actually you notice this is a capital S here, so it's actually the official name of that piece, that territory. So why don't we say together, Gaza Strip? Gaza Strip. Okay. Okay, let's quickly read this. At least 500 people were killed. The Hamas-run health ministry in the Gaza Strip said. Okay. Okay. So here it is. It says, rage at the hospital carnage spread through the Middle East as U.S. President Joe Biden landed in Israel in the hopes of stopping the war from spreading. Okay, so rage means what? Well, it's not just upset. If you feel rage, you feel what? Really angry. I mean, rage. The idea behind rage means when I think of rage, I think of Xingnongsi. If you say he is furious, okay, he is furious. Furious means, or rage. Actually, another I should say that a similar word that means is fury. F-U-R-Y. Fury and rage are very similar. Okay, they just mean great, strong anger. Okay, so yeah. So rage is not just like, oh, I'm a little bit angry, or I'm a little bit upset, or I feel a little bit unhappy. No, if you're raging about something, or you feel rage, it means you feel deep anger. Okay, so let's say it together. Rage. And then this means here on the right, fury. Okay, and then the Xinglongsi, furious. Okay, yeah, you're really angry. You can say, wow, I was furious over that mistake. Okay, so rage at, or we could say rage about, or rage at, the hospital carnage spread through the Middle East. Okay, spread through the Zhongdong area. Now, this is a good word. I don't know if we've ever learned this word. Carnage means what? Yeah, it means great destruction. okay, or terrible destruction, or death, or damage, or whatever. So often, like if you had a really terrible typhoon come through Taichung and it created lots of damage, maybe there was stuff laying everywhere. We say there was great carnage from the typhoon, or the typhoon caused a lot of carnage. Or let's say, often we see carnage during wartime, of course, just like this. Wartime that creates lots of death. We say death and carnage. So carnage is this idea of great destruction. Lots of things are destroyed. So why don't we say together, carnage? Carnage. Right. Of course, people use this word sometimes in less serious ways, right? You could say that she is creating lots of carnage at work. Maybe someone has their gushing is very bad and they don't get along with anybody and they're creating lots of trouble at work. You can say she is creating all kinds of carnage at work. It doesn't mean she's really destroying things, but it just means that she's making a mess of everything. Or you could say, let's say you let your dog stay at home during the daytime and you come home and the dog has destroyed everything. You can say there was great carnage in my house. My dog created great carnage. Okay. So sometimes we use this word in different ways, but of course what it really means is great destruction. Okay, so rage at the hospital carnage spread through the Middle East as U.S. President Biden landed in Israel. Okay, so he flew there in the hopes of means he hopes to stopping the war from spreading. Of course, this is a terrible conflict, and it would be nice if there was peace too. Okay, so let's read this together. Rage at the hospital carnage spread through the Middle East. Middle East. As U.S. President Joe Biden landed in Israel in the hopes of stopping the war from spreading. Okay, so it says here, Biden embraced Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on his arrival. Based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you, he told Netanyahu in remarks in front of the media. Okay, so embrace, you know what embrace means. What's hug? Yeah, if you hug somebody. Americans love to hug, they're a hugging culture. But in Taiwan and many other places, if you try to hug somebody, they might be like, "What are you doing? Stay away from me." But yeah, it's often people do this. If you meet, if you go to America, and not just America, there are some other cultures that do this too. They like to hug, either say hello or say goodbye. So why don't we say together, embraced, embraced. Okay. And he says, based on what I've seen, it appears that it was done, though it was done by the other team. What does he mean here? Do you have any idea? What's he talking about? Right, exactly. He's saying it's not your fault. This whole conflict was started by the other team. Now he's using the word team, right? The group. There was basically the Hamas, not by you. Okay. So that's what he's saying there. Okay, so let's read this together. Biden embraced Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on his arrival. Based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. He told Netanyahu in remarks in front of the media. Okay, that's a photo caption. He later said his comment was based on data, you could say data or data, shown to him by the U.S. Department of Defense. Okay, it says here, After the hospital blast, Jordan canceled a meeting with Biden. Jordan's King Abdullah II, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. I'm just trying to see here. That's funny. This is like an incomplete sentence. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what's going on with that. Anyhow, it says Biden would now visit only Israel, a White House official said. I don't know. You notice here, there's a mistake here. So there's these names, but I don't know what's going on with those names. Anyhow, here we have Jordan cancel the meeting with Biden. So that's, I guess these other guys, maybe these other guys also canceled their meetings. I don't think we need to read this. Let's just keep going. It says here, the war between Israel and Hamas was pushing the region to the brink. Jordanian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ayman Safadi, told state-run television. These names are difficult. Okay, so the war between these two sides is pushing the region to the brink. What does this mean? Well, first of all, what does the brink mean? What's another word for brink? There's a very simple word we use. Edge, yes. So the edge, right? The brink. You know, if you're at a cliff, let's say you're hiking in the mountains and there's a cliff or a steep drop off, and you walk to the brink of the cliff, it means the edge of the cliff, right? It's very close to falling over or dropping over. So it says here we're pushing the region to the brink. The brink of what? What's he talking about? War. Yeah. So often we use the word the brink of war. Now, of course, there already is a war, but I think he's talking about a greater war, a greater problem. So the brink, the edge of something. So it could be when we say something has been pushed to the brink, it means that it is very, very at the edge of something bigger, maybe a bigger problem or a crisis or a tragedy or something like that. We say at the brink, it means at the edge of something. Does everybody understand that? Everybody understand? Okay, so why don't we say the word brink? Brink. Right. So you could say, I am at the brink of leaving my job, or I'm at the brink of getting really angry. Okay, it means I'm at the edge of something. I'm about to. Okay, so here he says the war was pushing the region, this whole region, I think, Zhongdong, the Middle East, to the brink, according to this Waijiao Buzhang. Okay, so let's read this together. The war between Israel and Hamas was pushing the region to the brink. To the brink. Jordanian Minister of Foreign Affairs Ayman Safadi told state-run television. Okay. The Israeli military held a briefing yesterday morning laying out its case for why it was not responsible for the explosion at Al-Ali Hospital. It was not firing in the area, Israeli military spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said. Okay, so a briefing is kind of like a military 记者会, kind of. When you say you're going to give a brief. Of course, a briefing can be a presentation. I think maybe that's a better word. If you present some information. Now, you can do a briefing in a government office, in a company. It just means you present something. So why don't we say together, briefing. Briefing. Now, brief can also mean very short, right? You can say we're going to have a brief meeting. But briefing here is you can say we're going to brief somebody, which is a 动词, or to give a briefing, which is a 名词. Okay, so this word brief has different meanings. Okay, so they held a briefing. That's the way we usually say, to hold a briefing. Yesterday morning, laying out its case. So when you lay out your case, what are you doing? You're basically arguing for something. For example, if you go to the 法院, right, and you have a court case, both sides will try to lay out their case. Sometimes we say to argue their case, means to fight for your case, to say, well, here's this happened and here's my evidence. Okay, so we lay out our case. Okay, so let's say you're having a discussion with your friends and you think, should I leave my job or should I stay at my job? And you say, well, my friend might lay out a case or lay out the case for staying at your job. He might say, no, you should stay at your job because this and this and this and this. Okay, or he might lay out a case for leaving your job. This is why you should do this. Okay, so this is a good expression. Why don't we say together, laying out its case? Okay, for what? For why it was not responsible for the explosion at this hospital. Okay, yeah. So let's read this together. The Israeli military. One more time. Israeli military held a briefing yesterday morning laying out its case for why it was not responsible for the explosion at Al Ali Hospital. Okay. It was not firing in the area, Israeli military spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said. Israeli radar confirmed a rocket barrage fired by the Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad from a nearby cemetery at the time of the blast, about 6:59 p.m. on Tuesday, Hagari said. Okay, so it was not firing in the air. It means it wasn't shooting in that area, Israeli military said. Israeli radar, you know what radar is? What is it? Radar. Yeah. Confirmed a rocket barrage. Now, some people say barrage, some people say bar. Well, yeah, I think it's barrage. Sorry. Barrage. So the emphasis barrage, it's on the second syllable. You know what a barrage is? Okay, so if you shoot your guns at somebody, right? Not one time, but many times. Like maybe 10 times in a row or 20 times in a row or 100 times in a row. Many guns are shooting at the same time. That's called a barrage. Okay? So it's like to shoot. Usually it's used for bigger guns, not like your small guns, but a big gun shooting a shell or a rocket, Feidan. If you're shooting a whole bunch of rockets at one time, we call that a barrage. Okay? So again, it's not one time or even one or two times. It's like many, many times together. It's like a group of shells or rockets. Okay, so let's say together barrage. Now this is pronounced with a j sound. It's like a French word, I think. Barrage. Okay, so they confirm a rocket barrage fired by the Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad. Now this is actually not Hamas. This is another group called Islamic Jihad from a nearby cemetery. And what's a cemetery? Yeah, a graveyard. Okay. Another word for cemetery is graveyard, right? Cemetery is probably the more official name, right? We don't, but more casual word would be graveyard. Okay, because grave is a 坟墓, right? Graveyard would be that area where you have, yeah. So yeah, why don't we say that together? Cemetery. Cemetery. That word too, graveyard. Graveyard. Okay. So let's read this together. Israeli radar confirmed a rocket barrage fired by the Palestinian militant group. Again, Palestinian militant group, Islamic Jihad, from a nearby cemetery at the time of the blast. Okay, I guess my voice is just really loud and I don't notice the microphone's not on. Okay, yeah. Yeah. What? Gorilla. Gorilla? How do you spell it? P. Yeah, gorilla, gorilla. Yeah. Yeah. Let me type that for you. Now, okay, so this is Xing Xing, okay, and gorilla is a underground fighter. When we say underground, doesn't mean they're underground, but it means that they're like they're not open. Like, yeah. So if in many wars there have been guerrilla fighters, right, or guerrilla, war. Sometimes we use it as a 形容词, guerrilla warfare. Like for example, during not all the fighting, but some of the fighting during wars like 越战, Vietnam War, there were guerrillas fighting in the jungle, in the Sunding, or many other wars. There's guerrillas. So anyhow, being a guerrilla, you could be a militant, but these militants are really not guerrillas. They're very open, right? So if you're very open, you're not a guerrilla. But if you're secret or you're hiding, then we say you're a guerrilla. Now, of course, again, these words are pronounced the same, but they're different words. Okay, so why don't we say together, guerrilla, gorilla, gorilla. Yeah, same word. Gorilla, of course, is an ape. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yongbi. Oh, yeah. That's a funny word, or an interesting word. Mercenary. Okay. Mercenary, you basically are a paid soldier. I mean, of course, most soldiers are paid. They get some money from the government. But a mercenary means you don't belong to that country. Like if some country said, hey, we want, like, I'll give you an example. Recently, some African countries, 非洲国家, they hire Russian mercenaries, okay, from 俄罗斯 to come and fight for them. They pay, actually, there's a company called, I think you've heard of it, Wagner. Yeah, they're actually like a mercenary group. You hire them, you pay them, and they come and fight for you. So why don't we say together, mercenary? Mercenary. Yeah, it's like a soldier for hire. Okay. So I'll read this paragraph, and maybe we'll read a couple more paragraphs, and then we'll go to a news story. It says, Hamas called Tuesday's hospital blast a horrific massacre, saying it was caused by an Israeli strike, while Islamic Jihad accused Israel of trying hard to evade responsibility for the brutal massacre it committed. Now, this word massacre, we see it. What does this mean? If you kill lots of people, it's called a massacre. Okay? Yeah, slaughter. Slaughter is a very broad word. We can use slaughter for many things. We could say they slaughtered the pigs, right? For at the farm, or the cows, or whatever. Slaughter means to kill. And slaughter can just mean one thing, right? You can slaughter one cow, right? But to massacre usually means many. Okay? So if mass killing, yeah, that's actually a good word, a good expression, really. He said the word mass killing. Yeah, mass means large numbers, right? So a mass killing would be, kind of similar to massacre, okay? So if many people are killed, so why don't we say this word together, massacre? Massacre. Okay, mass killing. Mass killing. Okay, so Hamas says this hospital blast was horrific massacre. Horrific, of course, means horrible, terrible. Okay, let's say that word together. Horrific. Horrific. Okay, saying it was caused by an Israeli strike, while Islamic Jihad accused Israel of trying hard to evade. Now, evade, what's another word that's similar to evade? Avoid, yeah. If you try to avoid something, evade something, means you try to escape it, right? So we could use words like, sorry, that's escape, okay? You say he's trying to escape responsibility. They're trying to avoid responsibility. They're trying to evade responsibility. These are all very similar words. It means to get away from, to escape. So why don't we say this together? Evade. Evade. And then over there, avoid. Avoid. Escape. Escape. So they're trying hard to evade responsibility for the brutal massacre it committed. Now, brutal, of course, means with great force, cruelty. Yeah. You know, brutal, if someone is very brutal, usually we say they are cruel. Okay? A brutal person, a brutal attack, a cruel attack. Okay. So Okay, so let's say that word together. Brutal. Brutal. And then that word, cruel. Cruel. Okay. So let's read this together. Hamas called Tuesday's hospital blast a horrific massacre. Massacre. Saying it was caused by an Israeli strike, while Islamic Jihad, let's say it again, Islamic Jihad accused Israel of trying hard to evade responsibility for the brutal massacre it committed. Okay. You know, Islamic is a 形容词 for 回教徒. Yeah, it's a 形容词. Okay. Yeah. Carnage is different. Carnage means great destruction, but massacre is actually killing. Like if people or something is killed in great numbers. It doesn't have to be people. It could be an animal. For example, they massacred the cows. Whatever. There's many things that can be massacred. No, ignore means not to pay attention to. You know, if you say, I'm ignoring him, I'm not listening to him. But evade means to get away from, to escape. Yeah. Homicide, it means murder. So homicide is just a general word. You know, if someone commits murder, right? Murder means to kill somebody. And then the police often call this homicide. The official word, kind of the technical word, is homicide, murder. Yeah. So a massacre isn't always murder, right? You could say there was people were massacred by or animals were massacred. I guess some people would call that murder of animals. But yeah, murder is usually, if you even just kill one person, that's a homicide or murder. Why don't we say together, murder, murder, homicide, homicide. Of course, homicide is a 名词. We can't say I homicided him. We say he killed them or murdered them, right? Okay. Okay, let's read one more paragraph and then we'll go on to a different story. It says, the blast left gruesome scenes. Hundreds of Palestinians had taken refuge in the Al-Ali and other hospitals in Gaza City, hoping they would be spared bombardment after Israel ordered all residents of the city and surrounding areas to evacuate to the southern Gaza Strip. Now, what does gruesome mean? Terrible. Sometimes we say disgusting. It means it makes you feel terrible. Awful. So when I think of gruesome, or it just means really horrible. Horrible, awful, terrible, disgusting. Anything that makes you feel really bad. But just kind of gruesome. Often, I'm trying to explain. It's like if you see something and it's really, really terrible. Like, let's say you say yesterday I saw a gruesome accident. Like 车祸. Maybe there was lots of blood,血or whatever, and that's gruesome. You see it and it's just terrible. Okay. Yeah. So it's that kind of idea that it's just something awful, terrible to look at. Okay. So why don't we say together gruesome? Gruesome. Okay. So hundreds of Palestinians, they took refuge. Remember that word shelter? Earlier we used the word shelter, S-H-E-L-T-E-R, right? Shelter. This word refuge is is almost the same word. So refuge, to take refuge, to take shelter. You can say we took refuge from the storm inside the building. Okay. We took shelter from the storm inside the building. Or you can say the building is a shelter or a refuge, right? So that word, those two words are the same. Why don't we say together refuge? Refuge. And you know the word refugee, right? G-E-E. Like if someone is trying to seek refuge, usually in another country, right? So if there's a big war, people will often flee that country to seek refuge in another country or another place. It doesn't have to be a war. It could be from a disaster. It could be because of economic reasons. There's many reasons that we have refugees. Why don't we say that word together? Refugee. Refugee. Okay, that's a people, a person. Okay. Hoping these people took refuge in the hospitals, hoping they would be spared bombardment. Now, spared bombardment means they would not be bombarded. If you say, I was spared that sickness, I was spared that trouble, it means I did not have that trouble. It was kept away from me. So spared bombardment means I was not shelled. I was not bombarded by these rockets or guns or whatever. Okay. So they hoped they would be spared bombardment. Let's say together bombardment. Bombardment. And the 动词 for this is bombard, right? So bombard. Notice the word bomb. Yeah. So bombard, bombardment. Okay. So let's say it again. Bomb. Bombard. Bombardment. Right. Okay. After Israel ordered all residents, all 市民 of the city and surrounding areas to evacuate. Evacuate means to leave, right? Evacuate to the southern Gaza Strip. If we said, please evacuate this building, it means we all need to go outside. We need to leave the building. Okay, so why don't we say together, evacuate. Evacuate. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, let's read this then. The blast left gruesome scenes. Hundreds of Palestinians had taken refuge in Al-Ali and other hospitals in Gaza City, hoping they would be spared bombardment. After Israel ordered all residents of the city and surrounding areas to evacuate to the southern Gaza Strip. Okay, so that, that Gaza Strip means the southern area. Okay. Okay, yeah, so this is a terrible situation right now between Israel and Hamas. Yeah. Rocket barrage just describes that when you shoot a bunch of, you could say they were bombarded by the rocket barrage. It means they were attacked or bombarded by the rocket barrage. The barrage is just a whole bunch of shells or rockets being shot at the same time. But you say they were bombarded by, they were hit by the barrage. The barrage hit them or attacked them, whatever. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you know, this whole problem has just been going on for decades, you know, many years. And, you know, I don't know what's, you know, the solution is really. They've tried many times to find peace in this part of the world between the Palestinians and the Israelis, but it's just such a long problem. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. It's a terrible thing. And the unfortunate thing is that when we have a war like this, the people who suffer the most are the civilians. Remember we talked about the word civilian, right? So the civilians, the Israelis and the Palestinian civilians who are caught in the middle of this, you know, on both sides, many thousands of people killed. So yeah, it's just a bad thing. Okay. Let's go on then to the next story. Okay, I want to look at this story because there's some good new words here, some good words to learn. Okay. Now we're back to China. So it says here, China Air Force harassing U.S. planes, Pentagon says. Now, you know what harass means, right? Harass means to bother somebody, but usually in a very serious way. Now, I guess it doesn't always have to be serious. Like, you know, like I think I told you before, when I was a kid, my parents would say, sometimes they would say, stop harassing your sister, you know, giving your sister trouble, okay? Or maybe occasionally they would tell my sister to stop harassing me. But harassing can be a much more serious thing, right? Often we hear about sexual harassment in the workplace, right? You know, recently in Taiwan, they've had this we call Me Too, right? That's about sexual harassment, okay? So, but here we're talking about the China Air Force harassing U.S. aircraft or airplanes. Pentagon, of course, Pentagon means the 美国国防部, that five-sided building, that huge building. Okay, so why don't we say that word together? Harassing. Harassing. Okay, so it says here the U.S. on Tuesday accused China of orchestrating a concerted campaign of dangerous and provocative Air Force maneuvers against U.S. military planes in international airspace, saying that such moves could spark inadvertent conflict between the two powers. Okay, so there's some good words here. So first of all, the U.S. accused China of what? Of orchestrating a concerted campaign. Okay, so when you orchestrate something, what's another word for this? There's a much simpler word. It sounds a little bit similar to this word. Or organizing. Okay. So, okay, you know what an orchestra normally is? We say orchestra is a what? 交响乐团, right? So, you know, orchestra, when you have an orchestra, you know, it has to be very organized, right? So if you orchestrate something, it means you make it happen. You organize something. It often means to organize something to make it happen, right? For example, you can say right now we're orchestrating a new event to do something, you know, like a 活动. We're orchestrating an activity. It means to organize something. So it has this idea of that you're bringing many parts together to make something happen. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So why don't we say together orchestrating? Orchestrating. So yeah, basically it means to organize. Okay, so they accused China of orchestrating a concerted campaign. Okay, now campaign means 动作 or 活动, but concerted. Okay, concerted. It's very interesting because this word also sounds like concert, right? Like a 音乐会. But a concerted mean here it's a 形容词. A concerted campaign also means an organized campaign. So it's organized. So again, these words have a very similar idea. You think of orchestra, concert, but here we have organizing an organized campaign. Of course, they can't use that word twice, but an organized. If something is, we say a concerted effort to do something, or a concerted push to do this, to finish this, it means I'm organizing everything. It's very well organized. Okay. So anyhow, these words have a very similar meaning, but they're used in different ways. Okay. This, of course, is a 动词, and that's a 形容词. Okay. Does everybody understand that? Anybody? Okay. So organized or concerted campaign of what? Of dangerous and provocative Air Force maneuvers against U.S. military planes. I'm sure you've seen videos of this where the Chinese airplanes, they fly very close to the American planes. Actually, most recently, there was a Canadian airplane, Canada Kongjun airplane flying near Taiwan, and the Chinese Air Force was like this close. I mean, very, very close, flying next to them. Okay, so dangerous and provocative. We talked about this word. This comes from the word what? What's the word? Provoke, okay? And if you provoke something, what does that mean? Yeah, to stir up. Oops, sorry. Let me just change please. Provoke. Someone said to stir up. We could also say another word we've used before is trigger. Okay, or simply to cause something, right? So to provoke means to, sometimes we say they're trying to provoke trouble. They're trying to cause trouble. They're trying to stir up trouble. They're trying to trigger some trouble or problem. So provoke is that idea you're doing something to make something happen. Okay? So provocative comes from the word provoke. It means that it's a 形容词. It means that action is very provocative. It might cause something. It might trigger something. Okay? Now, it could be many things. Provocative could be you could provoke an emotion, right? A feeling. Okay. So anyhow, let's say it together. Provocative. Provocative. If you use provocative language, for example, sometimes the way we talk can provoke somebody to anger or something else, okay? The way you speak, the words you use could be very provocative, So let's say those words together. These are all 动词. To provoke. To provoke. To stir up. To stir up. To trigger. To trigger. Okay, so they're accusing China of organizing a campaign of dangerous and provocative Air Force maneuvers. Of course, maneuver is like action. A drill. Yeah, maneuver could be like a 演习, but here maneuver means the way you move. Okay. For example, if I maneuver around the tables, it means I'm moving around the tables. So to maneuver, a ship, 船, we have to maneuver a ship into a 港口, right? It has to move in a certain way to go into the harbor. Okay. So maneuvers against United States military planes in international airspace. Okay. So the air is international airspace, with airspace. Does not belong to Taiwan or any other China or in any other country. Saying that such moves, such actions could spark. Okay, here's that word spark. Now this word spark is very similar to this word, trigger. Now spark, we could say to trigger, to provoke. Okay, spark is, what is that called? 火花, or what do they call it? Yeah. So to spark, spark can start a fire, right? One spark can start a fire. So to spark, here's a 动词. Inadvertent conflict. Now this is a really good word. If you do something inadvertently, what does that mean? Anyone know? Very good word. It means to do it unintentionally. Okay. Yeah. So if you do something intentionally, it means you do it on purpose, right? But if you do something unintentionally, it means I did not intend for that to happen. So inadvertently means it's almost like a mistake, right? By accident. Okay. So you say I inadvertently changed my computer settings. Okay, I was working on my computer and I hit the wrong key and then everything went blank and I inadvertently erased my computer memory. Okay, or I unintentionally erased my computer memory. It means I did not do it on purpose. 不是故意的, right? Okay, so this word is very, very good. Unintentionally, inadvertently. Of course, inadvertently is a 副词. We could say inadvertent is a 形容词. Okay, so it's a good word to know. We don't usually say advertent. I mean, we could, I guess, but that's not a word we normally use. Whereas here we do say intentional or intentionally, unintentional, unintentionally. We can use that word either way. So why don't we say this word together? Inadvertent. Inadvertent. And let's use it as a adverb, 副词. Inadvertently. Inadvertently. Okay, and then let's say this too because it's a good word. Intentional. Intentionally. Unintentional. Unintentionally. Right. Because you say, well, it was not my intention to do that. I did this unintentionally. Okay. Okay, so they say this could start or trigger or cause an inadvertent conflict between China and the United States. I guess we could say an unintentional conflict between the United States and China. They had no intention. They didn't mean to go to war or fight each other, but something happens. Okay? Any questions about this? Okay. Okay. Let's say this together then. The U.S. on Tuesday accused China of orchestrating a concerted campaign of dangerous and provocative Air Force maneuvers against U.S. military planes in international airspace. Saying that such moves could spark inadvertent conflict. Let's say this two words again. Inadvertent conflict. Conflict between the two powers. Okay. So then it says, the Pentagon said aggressive tactics by Chinese aircraft threatened U.S. planes flying over the East and South China Seas, tallying more than 180 such incidents since the fall of 2021. More in the past 2 years than in the decade before that, U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Security Affairs, Eli Ratner, said. Okay, so aggressive, what does aggressive mean? It means very forceful, right? If you are being aggressive towards somebody, it means you're showing lots of force towards them. Maybe you're not hitting them, but you're acting aggressively. You know, if you're walking outside, sometimes you see a dog and they act aggressive, right? Maybe they're barking at you Maybe they run at you. I was out in Tai'an, near Holy, about a month, last month, and I was walking around the Xiangxia area, and there was a farmhouse, like what is that, Sanhe or whatever. And I was taking pictures, and there were two dogs sitting inside. And as soon as they saw me, they started running at me. And I thought, I'm just going to be calm. So I just sat there, and they ran up to the door, and then they stopped and walked back in. But they acted aggressive, but then they stopped. They didn't come out. But yeah, so that we can say they acted aggressively. Okay, so you know what I mean? You know what aggressive means, right? Okay, so let's say together, aggressive. Aggressive. Okay, tactic. Tactic is a way, like almost like a 做法. It's a way we do something, right? We can say, what is your way of doing something? What's your tactic for doing? It's a word that we use often in the military, in the 军队. It means like what method will you use to do something? We say your tactic for doing something, the way you do something. Okay, so here's an aggressive tactic. Why don't we say these two words together? Aggressive tactics. Aggressive tactics. Okay, by Chinese aircraft threaten U.S. planes flying over the East China Sea and the South China Sea, tallying more than 180 such incidents. Such incidents means incidents like that. When we say such incidents, it means, yeah, as such is referring to that. Okay, now this word here is a good word. What's another word for this? Instead of tallying, what do we say? Starts with a T. Totaling. Yeah. So a tally, I think I'm spelling this right. Totaling, okay? Like total is but so a tally is also like a means. We can say, what is your tally for today's meeting? That might mean how many people are going to attend today's meeting. Tally is like a total. So we can use the word tallying like totaling, okay? Means how many altogether, okay? So we could say total of, or tallying more, or totaling more than 180 such incidents since the fall of 2021, okay? So let's read this together. First of all, the means, tally, tally, tallying, tallying, total, totaling. Okay, so it says here, more, this 180 such incidents are more in the past 2 years than in the decade before that. So in 2 years, they've had more of these incidents than in the 10 years before that. Okay, so a big increase. Okay, yeah, okay, so let's read this together. The Pentagon said aggressive tactics. Let's say those two words again. Aggressive tactics by Chinese aircraft threatened U.S. planes flying over the East and South China Seas. Tallying more than 180 such incidents since the fall of 2021. More in the past 2 years than in the decade before that. U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Security Affairs, Eli Ratner said. Okay. He says, that's nearly 200 cases where Chinese operators have discharged chaff or shot off flares or approached too rapidly or close to U.S. aircraft, Ratner told a news conference. Okay, So almost 200 cases where Chinese operators, means Chinese probably pilots, have discharged chaff. Now, do you know what discharge means? Discharge means to give off or give out. I'm trying to think what. Okay. Okay. So if you have a cold, 感冒, right? Your nose will 流鼻水, right? We say to discharge. That's like or if you have a 伤口, sometimes it discharges blood or water. It means to give off. It's coming out, right? So discharge. You could say, like, sometimes when we have problems with water pollution, right? 那个污染, in the water, maybe we can say the factory, the 工厂, is discharging polluted water. It means polluted water is coming out of the 工厂, the factory, maybe into the ocean or into the river or something. So discharge means to come out of. Okay, so why don't we say together, discharge. Discharged. Now, of course, the word can be used as a 名词, a discharge could be a noun, or discharged could be a verb. Okay, so discharged chaff. Now, this is a very interesting word we don't hear very often. Chaff is like lots of small pieces of paper or foil. This is used for a very specific purpose, or very specific purposes. I'll give you one example that's more fun. Is, sometimes when we have a big celebration, like a festival, and they have lots of little pieces of paper, and they're in many different colors, we call that chaff. Okay, yeah, it's like lots of little pieces of paper. But this chaff here is used, I'm sure you've seen, how many of you seen, like, I don't know, maybe some movies where, like 战斗机 or airplane, and they want to avoid 雷达, right? So they use, the chaff is made out of metal, a foil, very thin pieces of metal, and they drop it, and then the radar cannot see the airplane. So that's called chaff. It's used to avoid 飞弹 or radar or something like that. It's a way of doing that. Does everybody understand that when I'm talking? Okay. So why don't we say together, chaff. Chaff. So they gave out this chaff, or they shot off flares. And I think you know what a flare is too. If you watch the movies like Top Gun, right? If someone shoots a missile at you, a 飞弹, you shoot off this very hot flare. It's almost like a fire, like a flame, like a hole, and you shoot it out. It looks like a shooting star, and you release it from the airplane, and the heat will track the 飞弹, the missile. I don't know what you call that in Chinese. We call it a flare. I'll tell you where else we use flares. If you're on a ship and the ship sinks, right, and you're out in the middle of the ocean and you're hoping the airplane will see you, you can shoot a flare gun. You shoot it and the flare goes up in the air, and they can say, oh yeah, there's somebody down there. Or maybe you need light. You're out in the middle of nowhere and you need light, so you shoot a flare up in the sky and it lights the area. Okay. In America, I don't know if they still do this. In Taiwan, if your car breaks down on the highway, you're supposed to put out that 三角形, the sign, right? But in America, sometimes they have a special flare. You light it, and it creates like a really bright light. It's like almost like a little fire. And you put it on the road, and then other cars can see you when they're coming. So anyhow, all of those things are called flares. Okay? So why don't we say together, flare. Flare. Okay. Or approach too rapidly, too quickly, or too close to U.S. aircraft. Okay. Any questions about this? Okay. So let's read this together. That's nearly 200 cases where Chinese operators have discharged chaff or shot off flares or approached too rapidly or close to U.S. aircraft. Ratner told a news conference. Okay. And that's a photo. Yeah. Yeah. That has a different word. Yeah. We call that a sparkler. You mean it's a long thing and you light it and it you can make yeah. That's not the same as, of course, in the temples. Miao, we use another thing called xiang, right? That's called incense, right? But a sparkler has like a fire. It's making, all the 小朋友 like to play with that. Yeah. The what? Yeah. You shoot it. It's a flare. Yeah. If it goes up into the sky, yeah, that's a flare. Yeah, yeah. But a sparkler is more for fun. Like I noticed here in Taiwan during like 中秋节 or something like that, people like to play with those. I know the Japanese in Ruben, they have their own special. They play with. Mm-hmm. But it's not fire, 没有火, 对不对? Yeah, that's called I think we call it, like, you mean like a 音乐会? Yeah, we call that a light stick. Yeah, or I think we call it a light stick. Yeah, you often you can shake it up and then you wave it around. Yeah, light stick. Highlighter is a pen. When you want to put something like, yeah, we call that a highlighter. Okay, so why don't we say together, light stick, sparkler, and then the xiang is incense. Okay, let's read this together then. That's nearly 200 cases where Chinese operators have discharged chaff or shot off flares or approached too rapidly or close to U.S. aircraft. Ratner told a news conference. Okay, news conference is like 记者会. Yeah, okay. What? Yeah, we could say a press conference. Press, P-R-E-S-S means 媒体, right? Media conference, press conference, news conference. Okay. This type of operational behavior can cause accidents, or dangerous accidents can lead to inadvertent conflict, Ratner said, adding that the incident count tallied since the fall of 2021 increases to nearly 300 when U.S. allies are included. So operational behavior means this is something you do as part of your operation, as part of your plan. It's not a mistake. 是故意的. So we say this type of operational behavior can cause accidents, and dangerous accidents can lead to inadvertent conflict. Conflict means fighting. Ratner said, adding that the incident count, it means the number of incidents, that they count these incidents, make a incident tallied, here's that word, totaled, since the fall of 2021, increases to almost 300 when U.S. allies are included. So when you include Japan or Canada and other countries, it's almost 300, not 180. Yeah. So a lot of these things are going on. Okay. So let's read. Incident is a very general word. It could be any kind of incident, right? Anything, we could, you could say there was an incident yesterday when my friend, he got into an argument with somebody. But an accident is like a mistake or something that happened unintentionally. So incident is just a real general word. Anything that happens is an incident, right? But accident is a specific kind of incident. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's read this. This type of operational behavior can cause accidents, and dangerous accidents can lead to inadvertent conflict. Let's say this once more. Inadvertent conflict. Ratner said, adding that the incident count tallied since the fall of 2021 increases to nearly 300 when U.S. allies are included. Okay. So it says here, Ratner said there was an intentional campaign by Beijing to perform these risky behaviors in order to coerce a change in lawful U.S. operational activity. So intentional means what? What's that mean? On purpose, 故意的. Okay. If you do, remember we said unintentional, intentional. So here's that word again. Intentional campaign, this effort, this 活动 or whatever by Beijing to perform these risky behaviors. Now, risk is what? 风险, right? So risky means it has lots of risk. So risky behaviors. Let's say it together. Risk, risk, risky, risky. Another way to say this, we could say high risk, right? High risk behavior, high risk activity. Okay. Behaviors in order to coerce a change in lawful U.S. operational activity. So the U.S. says this activity, what we're doing is lawful. It's another word for this is what? Legal, right? Legal. Something is legal, it's lawful, it's according to the law. So they're saying that the Chinese are doing these risky behaviors in order to coerce a change. Now, this is a great word. What does coerce mean? What? Means to force, to push. Okay. If you are coerced into doing something, it means you are pushed into doing something. Almost like forced into doing something. So you could say, I didn't want to sell my car, but I was coerced by my friends into selling my car. It means I was forced or pushed to do something. Yeah. So coerced and is a very good word. Generally, if you are coerced in doing something, you don't want to do it. It's not your intention to do that thing, but you were pushed to do that thing against your will. Okay. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So let's say this word together, coerce. Coerce. And if you want to make this into a means, it becomes coercion. C-I-O-N. Coercion. Coercion. Right. You can say he used coercion to make me do that. It means he used force. Okay. So in order to coerce a change in this legal American behavior, basically Americans saying they want to change our legal behavior. We've been doing this lawfully or legally, but they want to force us to change that. Okay. Let's read this then. Ratner said there was an intentional campaign by Beijing to perform these risky behaviors in order to coerce a change in lawful U.S. operational activity. Okay. So it says here, the United States will not be deterred or coerced. We will continue to fly, sail, and operate safely and responsibly wherever international law allows, he said. Okay, so he says we will not be deterred. Now, deter, D-E-T-E-R, deter means what? Yeah, to stop someone from doing something. You can say, I'm going to deter him from leaving this place. I'm going to deter him from taking that action. It means I'm going to stop him from doing something. So if the United States will not be deterred, it means we will not be stopped. Okay? Or, and here's that word again, coerced. Be forced to do something. We will continue to fly, sail, and operate safely and responsibly wherever international law allows. Okay? It's interesting, the U.S., they often use a word for this kind of operation. They call this freedom of navigation. Okay, navigation means, like, if you're a ship or an airplane, means this is used for the ocean, for ships, not airplanes. So navigate, when a ship moves from point A to point B, usually we say that's a navigation. They navigate it. In fact, there's a job if you're on a ship, but also we used to be in the airplanes, they had this too. A navigator. A navigator is a person who decides which way you should go, right? They look at the map, and they maybe, in the old days, long time ago, they would look at the sun or the stars, and then they would say, okay, we need to go this way, or we need to go that way, or we need to steer. That person is called a navigator. So to navigate means to travel, to move across the ocean, to travel usually from one place to another. So Americans, they've been calling this freedom of navigation. Sometimes they say FON. Freedom of navigation means that we have the freedom to sail on the ocean on international waters. Of course, if those waters belong to somebody else, well then, they shouldn't be there. But they're saying these are open seas, open ocean, international waters. So we have freedom of navigation operations. Okay. But this is talking about airplanes, not ships. Okay. That's why they're always sailing through the Taiwan Strait, Taiwan Haixia. Okay. Okay, let's read this. The United States will not be deterred or coerced. We will continue to fly, sail, and operate safely and responsibly. Wherever international law allows. He said. Okay. It says here, in one instance, a Chinese fighter plane approached our asset at a speed of hundreds of miles per hour, clearly armed, and closing to just 30 feet or 9 meters away, and stayed there for more than 15 minutes, Ratner said. Okay, when we say in one instance, it means in one incident, in one time, one instance. Sometimes when we say, for example, we might say, for instance. Yeah. So if someone says, well, can you show me? You can say, well, for instance, yesterday I did this and this and this. It means, for example, okay? So in one instance, in one situation, one incident, a Chinese fighter plane means, 战斗机, approached our asset. Now, asset is just a general word. It means something that belongs to you, right? We all have assets, right? Maybe it's money, maybe you own a house, maybe you have a car. Those are all your assets. So he said our asset. Of course, I think he's talking about their airplane. At a speed of hundreds of miles per hour. They're going very fast. Clearly armed means they were clearly, you could see the airplane had weapons, like probably 飞弹, right? They were carrying missiles. And closing means coming to, approaching to, getting as close as, just 30 feet or 9 meters away. Now, if you're flying an airplane, that's very, 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 very close, right? That's like, very close. And stayed there for more than 15 minutes. So according to him, this is one incident that he's describing. Okay, any questions? This reminds me of the one that I saw in the video from Canada. The airplane came right next to the Canadian airplane, and he just sat there very close. And it was funny because there was a Jija on the Canadian airplane, and she was asking, she said, is this normal? And the pilot's like, no, this is not normal. So yeah, but they were very calm. They were no one got too excited. So yeah. Okay, so let's read this. In one instance, a Chinese fighter plane approached our asset at a speed of hundreds of miles per hour. Hundreds of miles per hour. Clearly armed and closing to just 30 feet. Or 9 meters away. And stayed there for more than 15 minutes. Ratner said. Yeah, okay. Okay, well, that's all we have time for today, but I hope to see you again soon, next time. And make sure you enjoy the Taichung Jazz Festival. You have, what, 4 more days? You can go there and check it out. Okay, we'll see you next time.
Flavor, fragrance。好，还在现场的各位，就是再麻烦一下哈，我们又要麻烦大家帮我们填一下问卷，好，满意度问卷。大家只要选台中美国资料中心，好，那就可以符合我们的活动了，这样子，好，谢谢。哦，然后填问卷呢，把那个填完之后呢，我们有送一个小笔记本，好，那就是功能简单，但是还蛮优雅的哦。好，大家可以来领奖那个笔记本，这样，谢谢。
Perfect.